Hello students. The topic of today's session is back and scapular region. The competencies which we have to cover are: describe, identify and demonstrate the position, attachment, nerve supply and actions of trapezius and latissimus dorsi. Describe the arterial anastomosis around the scapula and mention the boundaries of triangle of auscultation. Describe and identify deltoid and rotator cuff muscles. Explain anatomical basis of injury to axillary nerve during intramuscular injections. The learning objectives which we have to cover are that by the end of this session, all of you must be able to identify and describe the sites of attachment, nerve supply, actions, and clinical significance of trapezius, latissimus dorsi, deltoid, teres major, and all the rotator cuff muscles, which include subscapularis, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor. You must be able to enumerate the boundaries and the structures passing through triangular and quadrangular spaces. You must be able to discuss scapular anastomosis under the heading Location, Formation, and Clinical Significance. You must be able to describe the anatomical basis of axillary nerve injury during intramuscular injections in deltoid region. And you must be able to discuss the triangle of auscultation under the headings boundary, content of the floor, and clinical relevance. And at last, you must be able to discuss the movements of scapula and muscles causing those movements. So let us start this session by seeing the surface landmarks. The illustration on the screen is the bony skeleton of back and scapular region. Here you can identify that this bone is scapula and this is called as superior angle of scapula. Likewise, this is called as inferior angle of scapula. Now you need to remember here that the superior angle of scapula lies at the level of second rib. Likewise, the inferior angle of scapula, it lies at the level of seventh rib, and according to some literature, it lies at the level of seventh intercostal space. You know about spine of scapula and apex and base of the spine of scapula. So the apex of the spine of scapula lies at the level of third rib. This is acromial process, which forms the highest point of the shoulder region. Now, in this illustration, let us trace the structures seen in the previous slide. These are the medial border of scapula. This is inferior angle of scapula. This is spine of scapula. Now, here we will see the surface landmarks created because of various muscles. Before that, let us see the scapular boundaries again. This is medial border of scapula. This is inferior angle of scapula. This is spine of scapula. And this elevation is generated because of a muscle called as trapezius. This is deltoid over the deltoid region, which provide contour to the shoulder region. This is latissimus dorsi muscle. So with this, we end up the surface landmarks. Now let us see the dermatomes over the back and scapular region. We know that a single spinal nerve divides into ventral and dorsal ramus. The ventral ramus is responsible to provide motor and sensory nerve supply to the skin and the muscles present over the ventral side of the body wall. Likewise, the dorsal ramus or the posterior ramus is responsible to provide motor and sensory nerve supply to the muscles and the skin present over the dorsal, that is posterior side of the body wall. The posterior ramus of the spinal nerve divides into medial and lateral branch. Both the medial and the lateral branch provide motor nerve supply to the muscles present over the dorsal side of the body wall. But out of these two, one provides cutaneous nerve supply over the particular area. In cervical and upper thoracic region, the skin is supplied by medial branch of the posterior ramus of the spinal nerve. In lower thoracic, lumbar and sacral region, the skin is supplied by the lateral branch of the posterior ramus of the spinal nerve. at this point, you need to remember that posterior ramus of first cervical spinal nerve does not give any cutaneous branch. Talking about the skin over the deltoid region, the upper part of the deltoid region is provided cutaneous nerve supply by lateral supraclavicular nerve, and the lower part of the deltoid region is provided cutaneous nerve supply by upper lateral cutaneous nerve of the arm, which is the continuation of axillary nerve, the details of which we will talk in this session. The skin and superficial fascia over the dorsal side of the body wall differs from the skin and superficial fascia over the ventral side of the body wall. How? Skin and superficial fascia over the dorsal side of the body wall are thicker compared to that on the ventral side, and superficial fascia contains more amount of fat on the dorsal side. Skin, superficial fascia and deep fascia over the dorsal side of the body wall are derived from paraaxial mesoderm. Now let us start with the muscles over the back and scapular region. The muscles of the trunk are divided into two groups: anterior axio-appendicular group and posterior axio-appendicular group. The anterior axio-appendicular group includes the muscles which are present over the anterior, that is ventral side of the body wall, which includes pectoralis major, pectoralis minor, subclavius and serratus anterior. The muscles over the posterior axio-appendicular group, that is the muscles which are present over the dorsal side, that is posterior side of the body wall. These muscles are grouped into two groups: extrinsic muscles and intrinsic muscles. Extrinsic muscles are further arranged in two stratas, superficial and deep, which are superficial posterior axio-appendicular muscles and deep posterior axio-appendicular muscles. The intrinsic muscles are also called as scapulohumeral muscles. So we are done with the anterior axio-appendicular muscles. Today we will talk about posterior axio-appendicular muscles. So let us see which are the muscles in these groups. The superficial posterior axio-appendicular muscles, the example is trapezius and latissimus dorsi. Deep posterior axio-appendicular muscle, the example is levator scapulae, rhomboids. And scapulohumeral muscles include deltoid, teres major, teres minor, supraspinatus, infraspinatus and subscapularis. Amongst the muscles present over the dorsal surface of the trunk, trapezius and latissimus dorsi are the most superficially placed muscles and are included in the group of superficial posterior axio-appendicular muscles. Trapezius is so called because of the shape of this muscle, which resembles that of a trapezium. As you can see in the illustration on the right side of the screen, this is trapezium of one side, which is triangular, and this is of the other side. When seen in conjunction, this muscle resembles trapezium. The muscle fibers of this muscle are grouped in three groups. They are upper fibers, which are also called as descending fibers, middle fibers and lower fibers, which are also called as ascending fibers. Now, before learning about the site of origin of this muscle, let us become familiar with certain bony landmarks. On the left side of your screen, you can see the base of the skull. Here, the red arrow indicates a protuberance, which is called as external occipital protuberance. From this protuberance, two linear elevations extend, which are called as superior nuchal lines. On the right side of the screen, you can see vertebrae. You can see the body of the vertebrae, and the red arrow here is representing the spinous process of the vertebrae. The apex or the tip of the spinous process are connected to each other by the presence of a ligament, which is represented by brown line here. These ligaments which connects the tip of the spinous process are called as supraspinous ligament. The supraspinous ligament in the cervical region is replaced by another ligament which is called as ligamentum nuchae. This illustration shows here, this is supraspinous ligament which connects the tip of the spinous processes, And in the cervical region, the supraspinous ligament is replaced by another ligament which is called as ligamentum nuchae. So you are familiar with the term external occipital protuberance, superior nuchal line, ligamentum nuchae and supraspinous ligament. Trapezius has linear site of origin. So the sites are external occipital protuberance, medial 1/3 of the superior nuchal line, ligamentum nuchae, spinous process of C7 to T12 vertebra and supraspinous ligament attached to the spinous process of these vertebrae. After taking origin, all the three types of fibers, they converge laterally towards the clavicle and the spinous process of the scapula. So the upper fibers, that is the descending fiber, they insert over the posterior border of lateral 1/3 of the clavicle. The middle fibers, they converge laterally and get inserted over the medial border of acromion and upper margin of the crest of spine of scapula. The lower fibers, they converge laterally towards the medial end of the spinous process at the deltoid tubercle. Talking about the nerve supply of this muscle, the motor nerve supply comes from 11th cranial nerve, that is spinal accessory nerve, and the proprioceptive fibers comes from the ventral rami of 3rd and 4th cervical spinal nerves. In the illustration on the right side, the red arrow indicates the spinal accessory nerve. It innervates the muscle by passing deep to it. Now let us talk about the actions of trapezius. In order to understand the biomechanics behind the action of the three types of fibers of trapezius, that is upper, middle and lower fibers of trapezius, we need to keep in mind three facts. Firstly, the upper fibers of trapezius, they originate at a higher level compared to the site of insertion. We know that the upper fiber originate from the external occipital protuberance, from the medial 1/3 of the superior nuchal line and from the ligamentum nuchae. And these fibers, they proceed downward and laterally to insert over the posterior border of the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle. And hence we can say that the origin of the upper fibers, it is at the higher level compared to the site of insertion. And hence, when these upper fibers of trapezius contract, they pull the clavicle and hence the lateral angle of the scapula superomedially, resulting into lateral rotation and elevation of the scapula. The second fact is that the middle fibers, they originate approximately at the same level as their site of insertion. And hence, when these middle fibers contract, they result in retraction. As we know that the middle fibers, they originate from the tip of the spinous process and supraspinous ligament of the upper thoracic vertebrae, and they insert over the superior border of the crest of the spine of scapula and over the medial border of the acromial process. And hence, when these fibers contract, they pull the scapula towards the midline, resulting into retraction of scapula. Talking about the lower fibers, the third fact which we need to remember, the lower fibers, they originate at a lower level and they insert at a higher level. We know that the lower fibers, they originate from the tip of the spinous process and supraspinous ligament of the lower thoracic vertebrae, and they insert over the deltoid tubercle present over the crest of the spine of scapula. So we can say that by knowing this, we can say that the lower fibers of the trapezius, they are located at the lower level compared to the site of insertion, and hence when these lower fibers of trapezius contract, they pull the scapula downward, and this result into depression and medial rotation of the scapula. Now let us revise the action of upper, middle and lower fibers of trapezius again. The upper fibers, they result in lateral rotation and elevation of scapula. As you can see in the lower illustration, they are contracting to pull the scapula upward, and this commonly occurs while performing shrugging of the shoulder. In the above illustration, you can see the fibers, the upper fibers, they are contracting to cause lateral rotation of the scapula. The middle fibers are responsible for retraction of the scapula, that is medial border of the scapula. They come closer to the midline. The lower fibers, they result in depression and medial rotation of scapula. As you can see in the illustration, the lower fibers are contracting and they are pulling the scapula downward. That is, they are resulting in depression of the scapula. And in the next illustration, you can see how the lower fibers are contracting to result in medial rotation of the scapula. Next muscle is latissimus dorsi. As you can see in the illustration, this is latissimus dorsi. It is a flat triangular muscle located on the dorsal side of the body wall. It is an example of spiral muscle, as before insertion over the upper end of the humerus, that is specifically over the floor of the bicipital groove, the muscle, the tendon of the muscle spiral round before insertion, and hence it is included in the list of spiral muscle. The other muscles in this group are pectoralis major and supinator muscle. Latissimus dorsi takes origin from the spinous process and the supraspinous ligament of lower 6 thoracic vertebrae, that is from 6th to 12th thoracic vertebrae, and of the spinous process and supraspinous ligament of all the lumbar vertebrae and sacrum. Few of the fibers also arise from the outer border of the posterior part of the iliac crest, lateral to erectus spinae, and few of the fibers take origin from lower 3 to 4 ribs, where this muscle interdigitate with the fibers of external oblique muscle. While passing the fibers after taking origin, they proceed superolaterally, and while doing so, few of the fibers also originate from the dorsal surface of the inferior angle of scapula. After taking origin from the spinous process and supraspinous ligament of lower 6 thoracic vertebrae, all the lumbar vertebrae and sacrum, along with the outer lip of the dorsal segment of the iliac crest, lower 3 to 4 ribs and dorsal surface of the inferior angle of scapula, the fibers of latissimus dorsi, they proceed superolaterally in order to insert over the floor of the bicipital groove, as you can see here in the illustration. The latissimus dorsi become aponeurotic before getting inserted over the floor of bicipital groove. The illustration on the screen shows how this aponeurosis spiral round in order to get insert or get attached to the floor of the bicipital groove. The illustration on the right side here, you can see that how the muscle fibers and the aponeurosis is spiraling round the fibers of teres major muscle, and while doing so, the lowermost fiber of the latissimus dorsi spiral in such a way that they insert at the highest point over the floor of the bicipital groove. Now, as you can see, the three muscles here, this is subscapularis muscle, this is teres major muscle, and these are the fibers, the spiraling fibers of latissimus dorsi. These three muscles collectively form the posterior wall of axilla. And also, while spiraling, the latissimus dorsi, which is placed posterior to teres major, it comes anterior to teres major muscle. Nerve supply to latissimus dorsi comes from thoracodorsal nerve. Thoracodorsal nerve is the branch of posterior cord of brachial plexus, and it has the root value C6, C7 and C8. Now, the point here is that latissimus dorsi, it is located on the dorsal side of the body wall, and hence it should get the nerve supply from the dorsal ramus of the spinal nerve. But thoracodorsal nerve is formed by the ventral ramus of the spinal nerve. Then why is it so that the muscle which is located on the dorsal side of the body wall is deriving its nerve supply from the ventral ramus of the spinal nerve? The reason to this is that initially, latissimus dorsi was located or was included in the muscles of upper limb, and gradually with the phylogenetic development, the muscle migrated on the dorsal side of the body wall. As doing this, it pulled the nerve supply along with it. and hence it is included in the list of immigrant muscles. The other muscle in this list are trapezius, levator-scapulae, and rhomboids. All these four muscles are called as immigrant muscles and they are located on the dorsal side of the body wall, but exceptionally they get their nerve supply from the ventral ramus of the spinal nerve. Latissimus dorsi, along with pectoralis major and teres major muscle, brings about adduction at shoulder joint. Because of the contraction of the muscle, extension and medial rotation at shoulder joint occurs. It also acts as accessory muscle of respiration, that is during coughing, sneezing. The muscle is active during deep inspiration and at the end of expiration. After knowing about the details of trapezius and latissimus dorsi, now let us trace the boundaries of a clinically significant triangle present over the dorsal side of the body wall, which is called as triangle of auscultation. Now, this is the location of triangle of auscultation. This triangle, it is bounded on one side by the inferior border of trapezius. Inferiorly, it is bounded by superior border of latissimus dorsi, and laterally it is bounded by the medial border of scapula. So this represents the superior border of latissimus dorsi, this represents the medial border of scapula, and this represents the inferior border of trapezius muscle. The floor of this triangle consists of 7th intercostal space, deep to which we have got lung and pleura, and hence the clinical relevance of this triangle is that it is the site of auscultation. Another clinically significant triangle located over the dorsal side of the body wall is called as lumbar triangle of Petite. Lumbar triangle of Petite, this is the location of lumbar triangle of Petite, and it is bounded on one side by the lateral margin of latissimus dorsi, or we may say the inferolateral margin of latissimus dorsi. On other side, it is bounded by the vertical border of external oblique muscle, and the base of this triangle is formed by iliac crest. The floor of this triangle, it is formed by internal oblique muscle. The clinical significance of knowing about this triangle is that it is the weak point present over the dorsal side of the body wall, and hence it may be a site of herniation of intra-abdominal content. That is, it may be the site of lumbar herniation. Also, in cases with abdominal abscess, the abscess may protrude out through this weak space present over the dorsal side of the body wall, which is called as lumbar triangle of Petite. By now, we are done seeing the details of muscle present in the superficial most layer of the posterior thoracic wall. That is, we are done seeing the details of latissimus dorsi and trapezius. Now, if we incise and reflect these two muscles, then we can see three more muscles here, which are levator scapulae and rhomboids, rhomboids minor and rhomboids major. Now we will see the details of these three muscles. Let us start with the details of levator scapulae. This muscle levator scapulae, it arises, or the fibers originate from the posterior tubercle of C1, C2, C3 and C4 vertebra. Now, what do we mean by posterior tubercle? So, in this the illustration on the right side of the screen, this represents the posterior tubercle of the cervical vertebrae. So, from the posterior tubercle of C1, C2, C3 and C4 vertebrae, the fibers of levator scapulae takes origin. After taking origin, these fibers, they descend downward and laterally to insert over the dorsal surface of the medial border of the scapula, extending from the superior angle of the scapula till the apex of spine of scapula. So this blue line represents the site of insertion of levator scapulae. Let us see the site of origin of rhomboid major and rhomboid minor. In this illustration, you can see this narrow muscle is rhomboid minor and this wider muscle is rhomboid major muscle. The rhomboid major muscle, it arises from the spinous process and the supraspinous ligament present over the spine of T2 to T5 vertebra. After taking origin, these fibers, they proceed downward and laterally, that is, they proceed inferolaterally in order to get attached or insert over the dorsal surface of the medial border of the scapula below the apex of spine till the inferior angle. Likewise, the fibers of rhomboid minor, they take origin from the lower part of the ligamentum nuchae and from the spinous process and supraspinous ligament of C7 and T1, that is post thoracic vertebra. And after taking origin from here, the fibers, they descend downward and laterally and then get attached, that is, get inserted over the dorsal surface of the medial border of scapula opposite to the apex of spine of scapula. This illustration is to show you the site of insertion of rhomboid minor and rhomboid major muscle. Here you can see this blue line represents the site of insertion of rhomboid minor on the dorsal surface of the medial border of scapula opposite to the apex of spine of scapula. And this represents the site of insertion of rhomboid major, that is over the dorsal surface of the medial border of scapula extending from the apex of spine of scapula till the inferior angle. Levator rhomboid major and rhomboid minor derive their nerve supply from dorsal scapular nerve, which is the branch from the root of the brachial plexus. It has the root value C5. These three muscles, they contract in order to result in retraction of scapula. Levator scapulae, it contracts to result in elevation of scapula along with the upper fibers of trapezius. However, retraction, it is facilitated by the middle fibers of trapezius. Now let us start with the muscle named as deltoid. Deltoid is a thick triangular muscle. It provides contour to the shoulder joint or the shoulder region. It consists of three types of fibers: anterior fiber, middle fiber, and posterior fibers. The middle fibers are also called as acromial fibers, and they are the example of multi-pinnet muscle. So in the illustration here, this is deltoid muscle and you are viewing the posterior fibers of the deltoid. About the origin of anterior, middle and posterior fibers of the deltoid. On the screen you can see the bone which is clavicle. This is the medial end of the clavicle. This is the lateral end of the clavicle. This is the anterior border and this is the posterior border of the clavicle. The anterior fibers of the deltoid, they arise from the anterior border of the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle and adjacent part of the superior surface. So this is the site of origin of anterior fibers of the deltoid. The other bone which you can see is the scapula, and this is the crest of the spine of scapula. So the crest of the spine of scapula consists of two borders. This is superior border and this is inferior border. The medial end of the inferior border consists of a tubercle which is known as deltoid tubercle. We talked about the deltoid tubercle, that this is the site of insertion of inferior fibers of trapezius. Now, the spine of the scapula, it continues laterally as acromial process. This is the lateral border of the acromial process, which is the site of origin of middle fibers of deltoid. This lateral border of the acromial process consists of tubercles, which represents the site of the intramuscular tendon, the site of attachment of intramuscular tendon of the middle fibers of the deltoid. As we know that the middle fibers of the deltoid are multi-pinnet muscle. So this is the site, the lateral border of the acromial process and adjacent part of the superior surface of the acromial process of scapula is the site of origin of middle fibers of deltoid. The posterior fibers of the deltoid, they take origin from the lower border of the crest of spine of scapula. So this is the site of origin of the posterior fibers of the deltoid. This is the schematic representation to show you the site of origin of the anterior, middle and posterior fibers of the deltoid. Here you can see this is the clavicle bone, this is the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle, and this is the medial 1/3 of the clavicle. The anterior border of the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle is the site of origin of anterior fibers or clavicular fibers of the deltoid. Now, this is the scapula. Here you can see this is spine of scapula, and you can see the posterior border of the spine of scapula, which is called as crest of the spine of scapula, which is the spine. It is laterally continuous with the acromial process. So this is acromial process. This pink zone represents the site of origin of the acromial or the middle fibers of the deltoid, and the inferior border of the crest, this represents the site of origin of posterior fibers of the deltoid. The anterior, middle and posterior fibers converge together and insert over the anterolateral surface of the shaft of the humerus. This blue zone represents the site of insertion of deltoid, and the site of insertion is referred to as deltoid tuberosity, which you can see in the illustration on the right side. This V-shaped elevation which is present in the middle 1/3 of the anterolateral surface of the shaft of the humerus, this is called as deltoid tuberosity. Deltoid is the bulkiest muscle present over the shoulder region. It provides contour to the shoulder region. This muscle holds several significant anatomical relations. We are going to learn the relation of the deltoid now, the superficial and the deep relation. If we proceed from superficial to deep, then the superficial most structure is the skin, followed by superficial fascia. The superficial fascia covering the deltoid consists of few of the fibers of platysma and lateral supraclavicular nerve. We learned about this lateral supraclavicular nerve earlier, that this nerve provides cutaneous innervation to the upper part of the deltoid region. Deep to the superficial fascia, we have deep fascia. The deep fascia covering the deltoid is called as deltoid fascia. So these were the structures related superficial to the deltoid muscle. Now let us try to learn the structures which are located deep to the deltoid muscle. In order to understand the location of the structures located deep to the deltoid muscle, let us focus on the illustration present on the screen. This is the sagittal section of the shoulder joint. Here you can see this is the glenoid cavity surrounded by the glenoid labrum and the synovial membrane. This green color structure is the capsule of the shoulder joint. Now, this is the acromial process. This is the coracoid process. Connecting the coracoid process and the acromial process, we have a ligament, this green color structure. This is the coracoacromial ligament. Now, deep to coracoacromial ligament and the acromion process, you can see this blue lined bursa. This bursa, because it is located deep to the acromial process, and hence it is named as subacromial bursa. The role of the subacromial bursa is to prevent friction between the overlying bone, that is acromial process, and the underlying muscle, which is supraspinatus. Now, if this is the anterior side and this is the posterior side, then these are the fibers. These are the posterior fibers of the deltoid, and these are the anterior fibers of the deltoid muscle. Now, anteriorly, we can see these are the fibers of pectoralis major, deep to which we have got pectoralis minor. Coracoid process gives attachment to two muscles. The tip of the coracoid process, the muscles are short head of the bicep brachii and coracobrachialis. So these green tendons are the tendons of bicep brachii and coracobrachialis. Further, if we proceed deep to pectoralis major on the anterior side, further deeper, we have got this muscle, the cut section of this muscle, which is called as subscapularis. If we proceed towards the superior side, this is supraspinatus, the cut section of supraspinatus muscle. Further posteriorly, If we go, this is infraspinatus. This is the cut section of teres minor muscle. Now students, subscapularis, supraspinatus, infraspinatus and teres minor, these four muscles are collectively called as rotator cuff muscles because you can see these muscles are present, or these muscles are surrounding the shoulder joint, and hence they provide stability to the shoulder joint from all the sides except the inferior side where we do not have the muscles of rotator cuff muscles. So these muscles, they form a ring or they are present like a cuff around the shoulder joint, and hence these four muscles are called as rotator cuff muscles. And these rotator cuff muscles, they are located deep to deltoid. As you can see, these are the fibers, these are the posterior fibers of deltoid, and these are the anterior fibers of the deltoid. And rotator cuff muscles, they are located deep to the deltoid muscle. Further, these are the cut sections, these are the fibers, cut section of the fibers of tricep brachii muscle. These are the cut section of teres major muscle. Now you can see this is axillary artery. From the third part of the axillary artery, the branch arises which is posterior circumflex humeral vessel. And in this case, you are able to see the red color structure which is posterior circumflex humeral artery. Along with the posterior circumflex humeral artery, we have a nerve running, which both these structures, they encircle the surgical neck of the humerus posteriorly, and this nerve, which is represented by the yellow color here, this nerve is axillary nerve, which is the branch of posterior cord of the brachial plexus. So these are the structures present deep to the deltoid muscle. Anteriorly, we have got pectoralis major, the insertion of the pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. Then we have got rotator cuff muscles. We have got tricep brachii, teres major and posterior circumflex humeral vessels along with the axillary nerve. Nerve supply to the deltoid comes through axillary nerve, which has the root value C5 and C6. This axillary nerve, it is the branch of the posterior cord of brachial plexus. After branching from the posterior cord, the axillary nerve enters the quadrangular space. The details of this quadrangular space we will talk in upcoming slides. As of now, you need to remember that after taking origin from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus, this axillary nerve enters into the quadrangular space. There in the quadrangular space, it gives an articular branch to the shoulder joint, and then it divides into anterior and posterior branch. The anterior branch of the axillary nerve provides nerve supply to the anterior fibers of the deltoid, and then it continues superficially and provide cutaneous nerve supply to the overlying skin. The posterior branch of the axillary nerve, it provides a motor nerve supply to teres minor muscle. As you can see in this illustration, this is teres minor muscle, and this is the branch from the posterior branch or the posterior division of the axillary nerve, which is going towards the teres minor muscle. The branch of this posterior division which goes towards the teres minor muscle consists of a pseudoganglion. After giving branch to the teres minor, the posterior division of the axillary nerve, it continues and then provide nerve supply to the posterior fibers and remaining part of the deltoid muscle, and then it continues superficially and become upper lateral cutaneous nerve of the arm. Now let us talk about the actions of the deltoid muscle. All the fibers, the anterior, middle and posterior fibers, contract to bring about movement at shoulder joint. The anterior fibers of the deltoid, they contract to cause flexion and medial rotation of the arm. The middle fibers contract to cause abduction at the shoulder joint, and the posterior fibers of the deltoid, when they contract, they result in extension at shoulder joint and lateral rotation of the arm. Let us learn about the clinically significant condition related to the deltoid muscle and the axillary nerve. Axillary nerve injury, it results in the conditions like shoulder joint dislocation, intramuscular injections given in the deltoid region in a wrong way, that is at the wrong site, and the wrong site is upper one-third part of the deltoid region, where the intramuscular injections must be avoided. The clinical features with which the patient with axillary nerve injury comes with are flattening of the shoulder contour. This occurs because axillary nerve provides motor nerve supply to the deltoid muscle. When axillary nerve will be damaged, the motor nerve supply to the muscle, the deltoid muscle, will be injured, or we may say will be hampered. As a result, atrophy of the deltoid muscle will occur. That is, muscle mass will reduce. As a result, patient will have flattening of the shoulder contour. Because of the paralysis of the deltoid muscle, patient won't be able to perform abduction at shoulder joint. The initial 15-degree abduction will still be there because it is brought about by supraspinatus muscle, and beyond that, patient will be unable to perform abduction. As you can see in the illustration here, this man is having axillary nerve injury and he is not able to perform abduction beyond 15 degree. Weakness of flexion, extension, medial and lateral rotation at shoulder joint will be there because deltoid plays the role in these all movements. Anesthesia over the upper lateral part of the arm will be there, and the area is known as regimen badge area. So in this illustration you can see this is the part innervated by the axillary nerve, and the patient will complain of paresthesia or complete anesthesia over this area of the lateral surface of the arm, and this area is known as regimen badge area. Now let us talk about the anatomical basis of axillary nerve injury during intramuscular injections. To understand the anatomical basis, we need to know about the normal course of the axillary nerve. We know that axillary nerve has the root value C5, C6, and it is the branch of posterior cord of the brachial plexus. After taking origin, or after branching from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus, this axillary nerve, which you can see in this illustration, this yellow color structure is the axillary nerve. This axillary nerve passes through the quadrangular space, which you can see here. This is the quadrangular space. So this axillary nerve passes through the quadrangular space, and on its way it provides nerve supply to the shoulder joint, and then it divides into its two terminal branches, which are called as anterior and posterior branch, or anterior and posterior division. We know that anterior division is responsible to provide motor nerve supply to the anterior fibers of the deltoid and cutaneous supply to the overlying skin. And posterior branch, it is responsible to provide motor nerve supply to the teres minor, where it forms the pseudoganglion, and remaining fibers of the deltoid are innervated by the posterior branch. And after giving these all branches, the posterior branch, or the posterior division of the axillary nerve, it continues superficially and become upper lateral cutaneous nerve of the arm. Now students, in this illustration, you need to know that this is the quadrangular space, and you can see superiorly the axillary nerve, it is related with the shoulder joint, and laterally it is in relation with the surgical neck of the humerus. Now, these are the fibers of the deltoid muscle. These are the acromial fibers of the deltoid muscle. You can see that in the upper one-third part, if injections, intramuscular injections are given in the upper one-third part of the deltoid region, then this axillary nerve, which wind round the surgical neck of the humerus, it is at high risk to get punctured by the tip of the needle, and hence it is advisable to give intramuscular injection in deltoid region either in the middle one-third part or in the lower one-third part. The intramuscular injections must be avoided in upper one-third part of the deltoid region. So summarizing the anatomical basis, we concluded these talked about the normal course of the axillary nerve, and because the axillary nerve wind round the surgical neck of the humerus posteriorly, and hence if intramuscular injections given in the upper one-third part of the deltoid, then this axillary nerve is at risk to get punctured. The correct site of intramuscular injection in the deltoid region is either in the middle one-third of the deltoid or in the lower one-third of the deltoid, because if given in the upper one-third, then axillary nerve is at risk to get injured. Let us learn about scapular anastomosis. Scapular anastomosis implies the arterial anastomosis present in relation with the scapula. Students, we know that shoulder joint is an example of ball and socket variety of synovial joint, and it is a freely mobile synovial joint. Because of the close relation of the axillary artery to this joint, this artery is at risk to undergo kinking, and hence temporary occlusion of the lumen may occur, which may compromise the arterial blood supply to the upper limb. So nature has provided us with scapular anastomosis. The scapular anastomosis, it is a arterial anastomosis which exists in between the first part of the subclavian artery and third part of the axillary artery, as you can see in this illustration. The anastomosis between the subclavian artery, the branches of the subclavian artery and the branches of the axillary artery exist at four different sites: subscapular fossa, supraspinous fossa, infraspinous fossa, and around the acromial process of the scapula. Now let us see the illustration on the screen. You are viewing from the posterior side. Here, this is arch of aorta, from which this is subclavian artery, which beyond the axillary inlet is called as axillary artery. Subclavian artery gives a branch known as thyrocervical trunk. From the thyrocervical trunk, two branches, one is suprascapular artery and other one is transverse cervical artery arises. The deep branch of the transverse cervical artery descend down parallel to the medial border of the scapula, and then it gives branches which reach the dorsal as well as the ventral surface, that is costal surface of the scapula, in order to anastomose with the subscapular and circumflex scapular artery, which is the branch of third part of axillary artery. So let us come back to the deep branch of transverse cervical artery. We learned that this deep branch, which is also known as dorsal scapular artery, it descends down parallel to the medial border and give branches which approaches the ventral and the dorsal surface of the scapula, and then it continues downward and end by anastomosing with the circumflex branch of the subscapular artery at the inferior angle of scapula. The next branch of the thyrocervical trunk is the suprascapular artery. As the name suggests, suprascapular artery, it approaches the superior border of the scapula. This is the superior border of the scapula. Here you can see a notch present, which is known as suprascapular notch. The suprascapular notch, it is bounded by a ligament called as transverse scapular ligament, which you can see here, the blue color structure. So the suprascapular artery, it approaches the suprascapular notch and then passes superficial to the transverse scapular ligament, also called as suprascapular ligament, and then it gives branches into the supraspinous fossa, and then it passes through the spinoglenoid notch in order to reach the infraspinous fossa. In the supraspinous and the infraspinous fossa, the branches of the suprascapular artery anastomose with the branches of the deep branch of transverse cervical artery and with the branches of circumflex scapular artery. So this was all about the branches of first part of subclavian artery. Now let us trace the axillary artery and reach the third part of axillary artery. The third part of the axillary artery gives a branch which is known as subscapular artery, which you can see here. The subscapular artery, it gives a branch, the largest branch, which is called as circumflex scapular artery, which wind round the lateral border of the scapula in order to reach the dorsal surface of the scapula. And here it divides into multiple branches which anastomose with the branches of deep branch of transverse cervical artery, that is dorsal scapular artery, and with the branches of suprascapular artery.
After giving these branches, the circumflex scapular artery continues downward parallel to the lateral border of the scapula and end by anastomosing with the terminal part of the deep branch of transverse cervical artery. Now, these two branches, this is anterior circumflex because you are viewing from the posterior side. So this is posterior circumflex humeral artery and this is anterior circumflex humeral artery. Both of them anastomose around the surgical neck of the humerus. The posterior circumflex humeral artery gives a ascending branch which reach the acromial process. Around the acromial process, this ascending branch of posterior circumflex artery anastomose with the branch of the axillary artery. We know that axillary artery gives the branch thoracoacromial trunk, and the acromial branch of this thoracoacromial trunk also reach the acromial process where it anastomose with the ascending branch of posterior circumflex humeral artery. So this is how scapular anastomosis is formed around the ventral and the dorsal surface of the scapula and around the acromial process. We know that deep to deltoid, we have insertion of rotator cuff muscles. These rotator cuff muscles, they are the group of muscles which surround the shoulder joint like a protective cuff, and hence the name given rotator cuff muscles. The contraction of these muscles bring about stability of the shoulder joint and hence they act as dynamic stabilizer of shoulder joint. The list of rotator cuff muscle include subscapularis, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor. The illustration on the right side shows the posterior aspect of the scapular region. Here you can see this is spine of scapula, which is continuous with the acromial process. Because of the presence of spine of scapula, the dorsal surface of the scapula get divided into two fossae, supraspinous fossa and infraspinous fossa. On the supraspinous fossa, you can see the brown fibers of a muscle named as supraspinatus, and over the infraspinous fossa, you can see these brown fibers. They are the brown fibers of infraspinatus muscle. This is the lower border of infraspinatus. This corresponds to the lateral border of the scapula. We know that over the dorsal surface of the lateral border of the scapula, over the upper two-third part, teres minor muscle takes origin, and from the lower one-third part, teres major muscle takes origin. So in this illustration, you are able to see three rotator cuff muscles from the posterior aspect, which are supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and teres minor. The subscapularis can be seen from the anterior side. Now let us talk about the site of origin of rotator cuff muscles. On the left side of your screen, you are able to see the costal or the ventral surface of the scapula. Over the ventral surface of the scapula, the medial two-third part, this is the medial border and this is the lateral border. This is the lateral angle and this is the inferior angle and this is the superior angle. From the medial two-third of the ventral or the costal surface of the scapula, a muscle take origin which is called as subscapularis muscle. Now let us see the illustration on the right side of the screen. Here you can see this is the spine of scapula being continuous with the acromial process. The dorsal surface of the scapula, it is divided into two parts by the presence of the spine of scapula. The upper fossa is called as supraspinous fossa and the lower fossa is called as infraspinous fossa. From the medial two-third of the infraspinous fossa, a muscle takes origin which is called as infraspinatus muscle, and from the medial two-third of the supraspinous fossa, a muscle arises which is called as supraspinatus muscle. Now, this is the dorsal surface of the lateral border of the scapula. From here, just below the infraglenoid tubercle, this is the site of origin of tricep muscle, the long head of the tricep, and The remaining part of the lateral border, the dorsal surface of the lateral border, if divided into upper two-third and lower one-third, then from the upper two-third part of the dorsal surface of the lateral border of scapula is the site of origin of teres minor muscle, and the lower one-third of the dorsal surface of the lateral border of scapula is the site of origin of a muscle called as teres major muscle. Now, coming to the site of insertion of the rotator cuff muscles. Rotator cuff muscle, let us first see the illustration on the right side. Here you can see this is the anterior view of the humerus and this is the posterior view of the humerus. Now, how do we identify this? Look at the lower end. We have got olecranon fossa here. So, olecranon fossa is present on the posterior side of the lower end of the humerus. So, this is the posterior surface of the or the posterior aspect of the humerus, and this is the anterior aspect where you can see lesser tubercle and a part of greater tubercle. You can also see intertubercular sulcus, which is also called as bicipital groove. So this lesser tubercle is the site of insertion of subscapularis, which takes origin from the medial two-third of the subscapular fossa. So this muscle, it is inserted over the lesser tubercle on the upper end of the humerus. The next muscle is supraspinatus. Supraspinatus insert over the upper part of the greater tubercle of humerus, which you can see here. This is the site of insertion of supraspinatus. Now, we need to concentrate on the illustration present on the left side. Here, this is the coronal section of the shoulder joint. Here you can see these are the fibers of supraspinatus muscle. They pass deep to the subacromial bursa. We have already talked about the role of subacromial bursa. It protects the underlying supraspinatus tendon from the above lying acromial process. It prevents the friction between these two structures, that is tendon of supraspinatus and acromial process. So this is the subacromial bursa. So after taking origin from the medial two-third of the supraspinous fossa, the supraspinatus muscle, it becomes tendinous. It merge with the capsule of the shoulder joint and then end by getting attached or insert over the upper part of the greater tubercle of the humerus. The next muscle, the third muscle is infraspinatus. Now we are viewing the posterior aspect of the humerus. This is the site of insertion of infraspinatus, which is posterolateral to the insertion of supraspinatus. Further inferiorly, this is the site of insertion of teres minor muscle. So greater tubercle gives attachment to the highest point is or highest impression is for supraspinatus, middle impression is for infraspinatus, and the lowermost impression present over the greater tubercle is for teres minor muscle. These are the illustration to show you the cadaveric view of subscapularis and supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor and teres major. So this is the ventral surface of the scapula you are seeing. So we know that from the ventral, that is from the costal surface, from the medial two-third of the costal surface, the muscle which arises and insert over the lesser tubercle present over the upper end of the humerus. This muscle is subscapularis. Now, on the right side, this illustration shows the dorsal aspect of the scapula. Here, this is the spine of scapula. So, above the spine of scapula, this is supraspinous fossa, and we know that from the medial two-third of the supraspinous fossa, a muscle arises which is called as supraspinatus, which get insert over the greater trochanter. Below the spine of scapula, this is all infraspinous fossa, from where the medial two-third of the infraspinous fossa is the site of origin of infraspinatus, which insert over the middle impression present over the greater tubercle. Now, The small muscle is teres minor muscle. It takes origin from the upper two-thirds of the dorsal surface of the lateral border of scapula, and it insert over the lowermost impression present over the greater tubercle. This muscle is teres minor and this muscle is long head of tricep. Coming to the nerve supply of rotator cuff muscles. All the four rotator cuff muscles, they are innervated by branches from brachial plexus. Subscapularis, it is innervated by upper and lower subscapular nerve. Supraspinatus and infraspinatus, they are innervated by suprascapular nerve. And teres minor, it is innervated by the posterior division of axillary nerve. Coming to the action of the rotator cuff muscles, supraspinatus, it is responsible for abduction at shoulder joint, and specifically the initial 15 degrees of the abduction at shoulder joint is brought by the contraction of supraspinatus muscle. Infraspinatus is because of the contraction of infraspinatus, lateral rotation at shoulder joint occur. This muscle also assists in abduction at shoulder joint by retaining the head of the shoulder inside the glenoid cavity. Teres minor. Teres minor muscle, it is responsible for lateral rotation at the shoulder joint or lateral rotation of the arm. It assists in abduction at shoulder joint just like infraspinatus. The last muscle is subscapularis. The subscapularis muscle, it is responsible for medial rotation of arm or medial rotation at shoulder joint. Over the scapular region, certain spaces has been defined. These spaces consist of or they transmit neurovascular structures, and hence these spaces holds clinical relevance. So let us now talk about spaces present over the scapular region. There are three spaces defined. They are quadrangular space, upper triangular space, and lower triangular space. We'll first start with the quadrangular space. So we will define the boundaries followed by the neurovascular structures which pass through the quadrangular space. In order to understand the location of quadrangular space, let us see the illustration on the screen. Here you are viewing the scapular region from the posterior side. So this is the spine of scapula because we are viewing the scapula from the posterior side. So you are able to see the spine of scapula. You are able to see the muscle over the infraspinous fossa. The muscle is infraspinatus. And parallel to the lower border of infraspinatus, you can see the small muscle which is teres minor. So we know that teres minor, it arises from the upper two-thirds of the lateral border of the dorsal surface of the scapula, and from the lower one-third another muscle arises which is teres major. So these are the fibers of teres major. Now this is the muscle fibers. This is the muscle fiber of long head of tricep. You can see humerus here. You can locate the upper end of humerus which is related to these neurovascular structure. This upper end of the humerus is called as surgical neck of the humerus. So we have defined the boundaries of a space, this space which is called as quadrangular space. So we may say that quadrangular space, it is bounded laterally by the upper end of the humerus and specifically surgical neck of the humerus. Medially, it is related with this muscle which is long head of tricep. Inferiorly, it is related with this muscle which is teres major muscle, and superiorly it is related with teres minor posteriorly, and anteriorly we have got capsule of the shoulder joint, and further anteriorly we have got subscapularis muscle. So let us summarize the boundaries of the quadrangular space. Quadrangular space, it is bounded superiorly by subscapularis, capsule of the shoulder joint, and teres minor muscle. Inferiorly, it is bounded by teres major muscle. Medially, it is bounded by long head of the tricep, and laterally, it is bounded by surgical neck of the humerus. Now, the structures which wind round the posterior surface of the surgical neck of the humerus forms the content of quadrangular space, and these structures are axillary nerve and posterior circumflex humeral vessels. The next space is upper triangular space. So let us see the illustration on the right side. This muscle, we know that this is long head of the tricep, and this is the lateral border of the scapula, over which we can see this is teres minor and this is teres major muscle. So this space which you can see, this gap, is the upper triangular space. So the boundaries of this upper triangular space, it is bounded superiorly by teres minor, it is bounded inferiorly by teres major muscle, and laterally it is bounded by long head of tricep. So we can say that long head of the tricep forms the base of upper triangular space, and the apex is formed by the lateral border of the scapula, where the teres minor and teres major muscle converge. So this is upper triangular space. This illustration is to show you the structures passing through upper triangular space. Here, this is the upper triangular space, where you can see this is long head of the tricep, this is teres major muscle. Teres minor has been removed in order to expose these structures, and these structures are circumflex scapular arteries and vein. Circumflex scapular artery is accompanied by two veins, which are the vena comitatus. They form the content of upper triangular space. Now let us start with the lower triangular space. Let us see the structures forming the boundary of this lower triangular space. In the illustration, you can see this space. This is lower triangular space. It is bounded on one side by the shaft of the humerus, on the other side by long head of tricep. You can see this is the glenoid cavity. This is infraglenoid tubercle, which is giving rise to this muscle. This is long head of tricep, and this is teres major muscle. So this triangle, let us now define the boundaries of this triangle, which is lower triangular space. The boundaries are, it is bounded superiorly by teres major muscle, it is bounded laterally by the shaft of the humerus, and medially by long head of the tricep. The structures which pass through this lower triangular space are those structures which then enter into the spiral groove. So before entering into the spiral groove, these structures, they have to cross the lower triangular space. So the structures are radial nerve. This yellow color structure is a radial nerve, profunda brachii artery, along with the vena comitatus.
After learning about the muscles attached to the scapula, now let us apply the knowledge gained in revising the movements which are possible over the scapula. So, the list of scapular movement includes retraction, protraction, elevation, depression, lateral rotation, and medial rotation of scapula. So, let us first start with the protraction of scapula. Before going ahead, let me tell you, the red line here, it indicates the midline, and we know that the scapula, it is located lateral to the midline, that is the vertebral column. So let us start with the protraction of scapula. Protraction is the movement in which the medial border of the scapula, it moves away from the midline, and this movement is brought about by serratus anterior, which is assisted by pectoralis minor muscle. The next movement is retraction. Retraction is the movement in which medial border of the scapula, it comes closer to the midline, and this is brought about by middle fibers of trapezius, rhomboid major, rhomboid minor, and latissimus dorsi. The next movement is lateral rotation of scapula. Lateral rotation of scapula is defined as the movement in which inferior angle moves away from the midline and glenoid cavity faces upward. This happens whenever the muscle pulls the inferior angle laterally, which is done by lower 4 to 5 digitation of serratus anterior muscle along with the lower fibers of trapezius, and simultaneously the lateral angle of scapula must be pulled upward and medially, which is done by upper fibers of trapezius. So you can see that this is lateral rotation of scapula in which inferior angle has moved away from the midline and glenoid cavity is now facing upward. The next movement is medial rotation of scapula. It is defined as the movement in which inferior angle comes closer to the midline and glenoid cavity faces downward. So this occurs whenever the inferior angle is pulled medially, which is done by rhomboids, both the rhomboid major and rhomboid minor, along with the latissimus dorsi, and the lateral angle must be pulled upward, which is done by levator scapulae and pectoralis minor muscle. So this is how medial rotation occurs, and you can see the inferior angle is now closer to the midline and glenoid cavity is facing downward. The next movement is elevation of scapula. Elevation is the movement in which the scapula is pulled upward, and this is done by upper fibers of trapezius, levator scapulae and rhomboids. This is how elevation occurs. And the last movement is depression of scapula, in which scapula is pulled downward. This is done by inferior fibers of trapezius and assisted by gravity, pectoralis minor, latissimus dorsi and lower fibers of serratus anterior. So this is how depression of scapula occurs.
We end up this session. Thank you.